Welcome to this week's episode of the Paranormal United States, episode 14, Indiana.
Yeah, so Indiana, home to Notre Dame University, Indianapolis 500, and is known for its corn production, apparently.
Oh,
Um, but there are a slightly darker side to Indiana. These are just bite-sized bits of weird stuff that has happened and hauntings that have happened in Indiana.
awesome.
So, first one, French Lick Springs Hotel in Orange County. Um, if you're going to go confront unknown things, you may as well do it at a world class resort equipped with 2 spas, 3 golf courses, fine dining, and a casino. It's that kind of place, top notch. Historic establishment, part of a larger resort casino complex that was built in 1901. And people that have been there and stayed Al Capone, Bob Hope, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Duke Ellington. So it is quite a
Quite old
well,
market.
yeah. It's not the kind of place I'd probably go myself. It's a bit out of my reach, but yeah. But according to legend, its former owner, Thomas Taggart, remains there to this day, reeking of tobacco smoke and loitering near the service elevator. He's also turned up in the main ballroom, riding a horse, and apparently he's not alone. Housekeepers occasionally find blood in a bathtub that was used by a jilted bride to commit suicide, and on 6th floor seems particularly prone to cold spots, prowling shadows, footsteps, and laughter. Also, the front desk reportedly gets phone calls from rooms which they know are empty. So that's the first place on the list.
That'd
And
be
that's,
pretty creepy getting them
yeah,
phone calls.
yeah, and it's I say it's an upmarket place, so I don't know if a lot of the population would know about it based on the kind of people that have
Yeah,
been
yeah.
clients there, or clientele as they say. So yeah, I think a bit of a strange one, and the fact that it's haunted by a previous owner tend to freak people out. The next one on my list is Indiana Central State Hospital in Indianapolis. So Indianapolis is the capital city of Indiana. Um, so this state hospital, and it always seems to be hospitals and sanitariums and those kind of places that tend to be quite haunted. We've got places in the UK that used to be psychiatric hospitals, and they tend to sort of have an abundance of people that outstay their body, as it were.
Gets a lot of
Um,
negative energy and
yeah,
very traumatic lives, so
yes,
they've not been able to move on or what
yeah.
have you.
I think you're right. The traumatic nature of their stay and the fact that these people tend to have some kind of like mental issues, stuff like that, causes them to not know that they're supposed to go on to other places. So this building is fairly old. It was constructed in 1848. Was originally called the Central Indiana Hospital for the Insane. Obviously, we don't call it the Insane Asylum anymore. It housed tens of thousands of patients in its vast buildings, and it was 160-acre grounds. It closed in 1994, so it's relatively sort of new in terms of being used. But unfortunately, some of its inhabitants, like you just mentioned, Ash, refused to move on. There are reports of screams and moans in the surviving buildings, assaults by invisible hands, and rafts and glowing orbs floating around the property. What makes it even weirder is that the large portion of the former asylum has been redeveloped into apartments, and word has it that a spiritualist has been called several times to clean them.
I'm not surprised.
So you imagine you buy it, you find out it's been on a insane asylum, and you have to call out somebody to come and cleanse the spirits. I think that would send you insane, if nothing else. So that is Indiana Central State Hospital. The next one, and one, the type of place that we've covered before, this is a haunted bridge. This is a haunted bridge in Avon, and it's a bedroom community, so a quiet little community, plays host to one of the nation's creepiest looking haunted bridges. It's a concrete railroad span that looks like it's as old as pyramids and sports an undeniably sinister air, especially if you drive beneath it at night. If you park and have a little hunt around, locals say that you might encounter the ghost of a weeping woman whose child was killed on the railroad tracks, or a drunken worker who fell into a load of wet concrete and was entombed in the bridge itself.
Wow.
Yeah, I think back in the old days, the like construction methods were probably not quite so safe as they are now, and health and safety was not really a thing back then. So to be drunk on site is a bit of a no, I would suggest.
Yeah.
And yeah, falling into the concrete, not so good. Not so good. And I suppose you get so far in, they go, you know what, we're going to have to keep you there, mate. So that's the haunted bridge. And then we move on in this whirlwind stop tour of Indiana to the Story Inn in Nashville. So during daytime, you can follow a meandering southern Indiana road to this almost too picturesque for words former general store that's been converted into a restaurant set in the woods. But the ambience changes when the sun drops and you realise it's black as pitch black outside, no one for miles, and you're not quite sure how to get home. And then, of course, there's a ghost. She's called the Blue Lady. She's been sighted in the general store and in the upstairs sleeping room if you go there. But if you like some me time with a ghost, you can rent her favourite spot, which is appropriately called the Blue Lady Room, a bit like the Bishop's Room in the Ancient Ram Inn in the UK, for around $200 a night. And you can enjoy the unique thrill of bunking in with one of the handful of cabins scattered across the dark wooded property. So far, no one's reported hearing any clanking chains or moaning in those, but you might get the Blue Lady coming to pay you a visit. So yeah, the Story Inn, another haunted property in Indiana.
Blue lady is a bit unusual because you hear a lot of white ladies, black ladies,
Yes.
grey ladies. When I've heard
Yeah.
a blue lady before.
Yeah, a Blue Lady, very unique. Don't know how many times she's been spotted or why she's haunting the place, but worth a road trip out, I think. The next one is Whispers Estate in Mitchell. It's a 3,700 square foot Victorian home, so it's big. I think a typical property in the UK is roughly 1,000 to sort of 1,500 square feet for a fairly sort of decent sized property. So this is obviously like nearly 3 times as big as the average UK house, so it's a big old place. Casual tourists are told that the house offers a friendly atmosphere and a place to unwind, while hardcore ghost hunters are enticed with the assertion that it's one of the few places you can go that the walls actually do talk. And apparently they do talk lots more than that. Over the decades, residents and visitors have reported horrific nightmares, earthquake-like tremors, and waking up to a sensation of an invisible entity sitting on their chest. Public tours are available, but you have to sign a waiver to say that you're all cool with that. So that's another one for the list, Ash. The Whispers Estate.
So what does it mean with the talking walls?
So they apparently they've got ghosts that whisper in the walls, so people wake up with nightmares and can hear stuff in the walls, people whispering, people shouting. Yeah, pretty mad. I think to wake up with something sat on your chest, that's got to be pretty horrific as well.
Might be the blue lady.
Might be the Blue Lady, yeah. And the thing is, it amazes me sometimes that you get get these kind of places where they say there's people being attacked and all that kind of stuff, and people having nightmares and tremors all over the place. It's like, why would anybody even go there? I don't. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't. Surely it's not a selling point. I don't know. I don't know. Next on the list, Slippery Noodle Inn.
Some of the names of these are funny.
I know. Sorry.
Slippery Noodle.
Slippery Noodle, yeah. It sounds like some kind of place that only adults can go to. But so, weirdly though, in operation under various names since 1850, so it's another old place. This is the oldest drinking establishment in Indiana. So naturally, there are some ghost stories. Legend has it that the place is haunted by the spirits of dead prostitutes. There we go.
Well,
Told you it was an adult place. Called it for back the days back in the mid 20th century, where there was an old school bordello upstairs. That's a knocking shop, I think, isn't it, or a brothel. It closed abruptly in 1953 after one of its patrons murdered another and left a weapon, a bloody knife, on the bar. Today, the ghosts commemorate those more colourful days gone by harassing guests, especially men, who dare to venture upstairs. Downstairs, though, apparently doors open and close by themselves. Staff report seeing apparitions, and patrons are occasionally shouldered aside by unseen forces. So yeah, we called the prostitutes the brothel, and I would imagine that back in the old days, again, I think it was a bit more brutal the times back then, and I imagine quite a few people succumbed to prostitution back then, as it were, and were killed quite easily. So, Slippery Noodle Inn. I think we need to pay a visit there, Ash.
So it's like a Chinese restaurant or something.
Yeah, it's actually like currently they have bands and stuff like that. It looks like an old school sort of tavern or Western tavern type thing. So next on the list, Hannah House. Now there's lots of houses in America that have got house as a second name and tend to be quite haunted. So you've got the Sally House. That's a massively popular paranormal house and haunted house in the US. And this one is called the Hannah House in Indianapolis. 160-year-old mansion, something that would be out of the Conjuring universe. Built in 1858 by Alexander Moore Hannah, it allegedly served as a stop on the Underground Railroad. Again, allegedly, several fugitives, slaves died in a basement fire, and they were secretly buried there, which might explain the weird sounds, moving furniture, cold drafts, and a persistent smell of death. Not very appealing.
No.
However, in spite of that, the house can be rented for weddings and other functions, and there's a monthly open house for the curious. And if that's not
smell
weird
of
enough,
death if you went.
yeah, moving furniture, all that kind of stuff. And if that's not bad enough, in the spring there's even an Easter egg hunt for kids. One fun activity, if you want to call it that, is to take loads of the photos of the interior and exterior of the building, then search them for ghostly faces, which are apparently seen in photographs when they're taken off the place. So, not one for my list, to be fair. The last one that we'll cover off today is Washington Hall, which is part of the University of Notre Dame, world famous university. If you'd like to rub shoulders with a celebrity ghost, visit Washington Hall and Notre Dame, the campus at South Bend. You might encounter the spirit of George, win one for the gripper, Gipp, the legendary Notre Dame football star who died in 1920. Not long after his untimely departure, students started reporting dismembered and disembodied footsteps, strange music, and doors opening and closing on their own. The former boys' dormitory now houses classrooms, but the guy is still reportedly out and about. So, a strange place to visit. I'm not sure I'd want to study there, especially if this guy is going to be walking around opening and closing doors whilst I'm in a classroom there. But that is a bit of a roundup of Indiana. There are loads and loads more. I tried to get it down to a few, but there's so many different hauntings and spiritual things happening there that I thought, you know what, I'll just cover off a few, see how we get on. And there's a whole wealth of reports of ghostly apparitions, hauntings, untimely deaths that are causing paranormal events to happen all over Indiana, and just like most of America actually. And as we're covering off the states, there seems to be a wealth of paranormal events that have happened and constant hauntings, which, considering sort of the relatively new age of the current America, seems rather strange when the UK's got like thousands of years worth of history, documented history, and there's nowhere near as much as what happens in even some of the states. So
yeah, it doesn't seem to be.
So that's us for Indiana and the paranormal United States. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next week.